I'll be over at 10, you told me time and again, but you're late. I waited around and then I run to the door. I can't take anymore. It's not you. You let me down again. Baby, baby, try to find a little time and I'll make you happy. I'll be home. I'll be beside the phone waiting for you.
Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Brew Crew Review. We've got a special edition for you today. We're going to have a Brewers Minor League edition, and we've got a very special guest in studio. Let me introduce you to Patrick Ebert over to my right from brewerfan.net.
Thanks for having me.
Yep, thanks for
Thanks
coming
for
in,
being
Patrick.
here.
Also on our panel today, we've got Chad Collins.
Hello.
And also, just to my left is, of course, Vince Travato. And we're hoping to find out where in the hell Scott Bartella is today, too, hopefully later in the episode.
I think we have a lead.
Hopefully we can,
we have a lead.
suppose they have a lead, hopefully he can join us maybe.
Fans, don't worry. We actually hired a private detective. Studio's paying for it. And they'll hopefully track him down later on for the show.
Yeah. Actually, those things you always say the studio pays for, they actually don't. I pay for them, but anyway, that's all right. But I'll send you the bill. All right, so let's get right into our interview here with, introduce ourselves to Patrick. First of all, where are you originally from, Patrick, and what do you do besides, obviously work on the Brewer fan website, brewerfan.net?
I'm originally from Erie, Pennsylvania, but I've been in southeastern Wisconsin most of my life. My mom was born here and raised and spent 5 years in Pennsylvania before making it back. So always been a Wisconsin sports fan. So for my professional job, what I do for a living is I'm the creative director for Summerfest. So we produce all the graphics and brochures and tickets and passes, and we have an in-house sign shop that we make all the signs. So, and that's what brought me to brewerfan.net originally, was my graphic capabilities. So.
Oh, great. Yeah, those are great graphics at Summerfest. It's really effective on me. I get down there 9 or 10 times a year, so great graphics. But
All right.
How long have you been a Brewer fan, first of all?
Oh, my whole life.
Really?
Going back, even though I was born in northwestern Pennsylvania,
Okay.
when the Pirates were doing really well at the time, it was all about the Brewers, Packers, all Milwaukee sports. So
Really?
when we moved back here, it was like I was born here.
Oh, okay.
You weren't too affected by the Sid Bream era?
No, no.
What about the early Barry Bonds era? That didn't draw you to Pirate baseball either?
I've had a place in my heart for the Pirates, and I've always been less hard on Barry Bonds as a lot of people, probably because of that connection. But when I was out there, it was all Willie Stargell and Dave Parker.
Oh,
those years.
We are
So,
family.
Ken Takovi, yeah, exactly. We are family,
Black.
so, yeah.
What made you focus so much on the minor leagues instead of Major League Baseball? What attracts you to the minor leagues so much?
I guess it's always just looking to the future, and when the Brewers have been so bad for so long.
So we've been doing that for a while here in Milwaukee and Wisconsin.
It seems to be a running theme, and there really wasn't any one good place you could go to get this information, and when message boards and stuff like that kind of came about, it gave you one place you could go to, and I mean, how long can you talk about Edgar Diaz or something like that, And I mean, so you start talking about the young guys, you just talk about Ben Sheets when we drafted him, and you talk about Nick Neugebauer when he's pitching at Beloit, and it just made it really exciting. And then the draft is the next step, and that kind of bridges, for me, the amateur side of baseball to the professional side of baseball. So, I guess just looking to the future is always the idea. So,
Right. So being a Brewer fan from a young age or whatever, what's kind of your favorite Brewer memory, or what's really hooked you into Brewer baseball back in the day?
going to my first games at County Stadium and watching Cecil Cooper, he always had the big hit, and And I remember Sixto Loscano, and with those two in particular, the crowd, they'd be like Sixto or Coop, and they'd be howling out for like forever. And when you're a little kid and you're taking all that in, you're like, wow, this is really exciting.
I was like, Dad, why are they booing Cooper?
Yeah.
I love that guy.
Yeah, I think a lot of people had that same reaction too. So, but that led in. We moved here in like '78, so that's when they were starting to do better, and the city was buzzing about the Brewers. They didn't have to compete with the Packers at the time, and so of course the '82 World Series was huge.
Yeah.
'87 the streak year, but '92 is probably my favorite memory, just because that was the last year you could wake up and be excited to check the standings and the box score every morning.
Yeah.
Because back then, you didn't have the internet to follow, and you relied more on the newspaper. So that was just an exciting year, just to wake up every morning and see how they did, and they were I swear, if they would have made the playoffs that year, they would have won it all. The way they were playing that second half of the year.
Being a long-term fan, what do you think happened after '92 that kind of led to the Brewers' recent
That's a whole nother show.
12 to 13 years? I mean, what do you think was the first step, though, towards the downward spiral, I guess you could...
The first step was probably not bringing back Molitor and not being committed to winning. Because if you look now, if the team had the '92 season now, let's say our season this past year, could be somewhat similar that year. If all of a sudden the team's like, let's just let Ricky Weeks go, and let's trade Fielder, and let's get rid of Sheets. They're too expensive, and that would really just destroy the team. And Doug Melvin wouldn't even think of that. No competent general manager would think of that. And that's when you bring Sal Bando into the equation. I don't mean to bring down Sal Bando the player, because he was a heck of a player, but he certainly didn't leave the franchise where it should have been. And if we would have been successful through the '90s and early part of this decade, it would have been because of how good he was as a general manager.
Yeah.
So.
And I think, unfortunately, the Brewers were kind of the victim there in the mid to late '90s of a time in Major League Baseball where small market teams are really struggling to get by. But I think with former Brewer owner Bud Selig, acting as commissioner, I think that they've tried to make strides and make small market teams more competitive. And hopefully, the Brewers with their minor league system can bear the fruits of that here in the future. Let's go ahead and get to. Obviously the site that us on the show we're all fans of, and also a lot of Brewer fans have really been drawn to this site since its inception, and that's www.brewerfan.net. You are a regular writer for the website. How did you originally get involved with that?
Well, I think when Brian was on here, Brian Kapelish, who's the founder, director, president, CEO, and everything else at brewerfan.net, he mentioned that a lot of us were on ESPN.com on the message boards, just chatting. We were doing all of our talking there. And before Brian came on, Toby, who was our original minor league expert, and he writes the Power 50. We always talked. We were like, we should have a website, where we focus on the minor leagues, and we can talk about things like the draft in amateur baseball. But neither one of us knew what we were doing with web programming, and we didn't even know where to start. So. And then all of a sudden Brian came along, and he just kind of threw out there, hey, I've started this website, and does anybody want to help? And Toby and I were first to jump on. He was like, yeah, get me in there. So I started doing the graphics. Toby started writing about the minor leagues, and it just kind of took off from there. So.
How'd you get into the writing phase in particular then, after the graphic stage was done?
I think it was just because we needed some content.
Okay.
We couldn't just post lists, and so we had a message board. So
necessity, all right.
And it's kind of funny because growing up, like, writing was my worst skill, and now it's like people call me a writer for brewerfan.net and Perfect Game USA, and it always kind of makes me laugh because it's just like, oh man.
I just put down what comes out of my head.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's exactly what a writer is. So you mentioned Perfect Game, the scouting report service. Do you still write for them, and how did you get involved with them, actually?
Yeah, I still write for them, and hopefully that will lead to bigger and better things down the future. I got involved with them because of the draft coverage. I was writing about the draft, and Jerry Ford, who's the director of Perfect Game, is actually the father of Ben Ford, who pitched for the Brewers a couple years ago. He's most notable for giving up Barry Bonds' 700th home run, but that's beside the point. Jerry became familiar with my work, and I was always in email contact, and I always visited Perfect Game message boards, so after a while he just became more familiar with me. And finally just started hinting at that he really enjoyed my writing, and he'd like to bring me on some capacity, so finally it worked out. So
great. So when did you start to really follow minor league baseball, or become such not only minor league baseball but amateur both high school and college baseball prospects that get drafted by teams. How did you get so knowledgeable about that?
I think it would have been around 87 that I started following the minor leagues. And I think a lot of that had to do with, at the time, they had Billy Joe Robideau and what are the other guys?
Joey Meyer.
Joey Meyer.
Hawaii Zone.
Glenn Braggs
Yeah.
and Mike Birkbeck,
Greg Vaughn
stuff
was
like that. Greg Vaughn.
Birkbeck.
Hey, Billy Bates.
Billy Bates. Yeah, Billy Bates, yeah. Yeah, the trade for
Ron Robinson, and
yeah.
Bob Sebra.
Yep. But that was probably about the time that I got into it. That led, to the George Canale years and
Yes.
Jim Tatum and Dave Nilsson and John Jaha just tearing it up for consecutive years. And I think that my interest in the draft started around 1990, and that was around, I think, when Chipper Jones, or was it, I think when Phil Nevins was taken first overall.
The Brewers, if I remember correctly, they didn't have a number 1 pick in 1990, did they?
No. Or, I mean, a first-round pick.
First round pick.
Yeah, because they probably for signing someone.
They signed
Yeah, I
they
remember-
sind Dave Parker from the A's, and I think that it was given
might be
up for
accurate,
that.
yeah.
If I remember back that far.
Well, they
but-
probably would have messed it up anyways, but oh well.
Because I think 89 they lost, or they didn't lose their first round pick, but they took Alex Fernandez.
They took Alex Fernandez, who ended up
And
not
then-
signing
then
with the
they took
Brewers.
Kenny Henderson the next year, and they weren't able to sign either one of them.
Right. Okay. That would make sense then. We
Yeah.
traded for one of your former Pirate legends, Dave Parker.
That's
Signed him
right.
as a free agent, and lost our draft pick.
That's
so.
right.
Fair enough.
Oh,
1
well.
year, that's all right.
But you do a pretty comprehensive coverage of the June amateur baseball draft. Now, in my opinion, this is an exciting time of year also, obviously, especially in the last 13 years where the Brewers needed the draft in order to improve their their team as a small market team. So, how much time do you put into that each year? Obviously, from what I've seen and from what I've read about on the internet, your coverage of the amateur draft is one of the best that is available, on the internet. Baseball America, obviously, that their entire site is dedicated to amateur and minor league baseball.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the work that you do for BrewerFan.net is on par with a lot of their coverage. So, how much time do you spend doing that each year?
Each year, it's tough to say year by year. I mean, a lot of it is, when I'm doing, the usual web surfing, you're kind of just soaking in information. And I would guess I'd probably put in maybe 10 hours a week during the spring.
Okay.
A lot of what really makes it, takes up a lot of the time is actual data entry. Where if you visited the site and you've checked out the draft coverage, we have a top 30 list of the top 30 draft eligible prospects. And as we go through the spring, we're adding more and more players. So at the end, I think last year we ended up with about 180. And so every week I'm adding 10 to 20 players, and that'll take.
And I mean, you're adding their stats, a pitcher, or like.
I'm usually
graphics.
not adding stats like scouting
Okay.
reports and things like
Okay.
that, and like the bio. He bats right, he throws left, and things like that. But that'll take 15 minutes to a half hour per player. And that doesn't even include. Going out there and finding the information on each player. And then we try to find pictures of the players so we can add, and then you add links that add to pertinent stories about the players. So I would guess about 10 hours a week, And this time of year, it's, I'm not really doing too much with the draft, although we do plan to unleash the 2006 draft information pretty soon. But
Patrick, I'd like to specifically talk a little bit more about the Brewers and this year's upcoming draft, even though it's fairly far into the future. But
Sure.
The Brewers' improved record in 2005, obviously we finished 500, so that's going to improve our draft position as well. Your last column, you talked about it a bit, but would you mind explaining for the audience a bit more about how the Brewers' record affects their draft situation and then how that's different from years past?
Sure, yeah. The past couple of years, the only, one of the few consolation prizes you get for being so bad is to get a high draft pick. And we saw that with Ricky Weeks, and people want to give Jack Zarenzik all the credit in the world for taking Ricky Weeks, but if we if we didn't have the second overall selection, we would have never had him. So this year, since we finished 81 and 81, we ended up being the 15th best team in all of baseball, and the draft order is established by the reverse order of the standings. So the Brewers this year will draft 16th. Any team drafting within the top 15 selections don't have to worry about losing a draft pick, at least not their first rounder. They lose. The first draft pick they would lose would be their second rounder, and we found that out last year when we lost we lost our second rounder for signing Damian Miller. This year, if we were to sign a Type A or Type B free agent, so Jared Washburn's a hot name, and he's likely going to be. Actually, I think I saw a Type A list, and he's not on it, but he's likely to be a Type B free agent. We would lose our first round pick because we draft 16th. So
if we were to draft 15th, we wouldn't be losing that pick. It's kind of unfortunate, yeah.
Yeah, and towards the end of the season, on the website, we were discussing that. This team could lose their first round pick if they're acting on the free agent market, and some fans are saying you're nuts. Why do you worry about that? And it's like, well, you don't want to root for them to lose, but you definitely, if you can get that 15th pick instead of the 16th, that could be a huge difference next June. So and this offseason, because if the team decides, maybe let's not sign this guy.
Yeah,
so,
and then a lot of times your first round pick can be an impact player, even if you draft toward the middle, like the Brewers will be doing, or the end of the first round. Definitely be an impact player for the future, not necessarily immediately like a free agent would. So unless the Brewers think they're really on the doorstep to, contending, then I think signing someone like Washburn or a Type A or B free agent might make sense, and losing the pick won't be that big of a deal. But if they don't feel they are, then I think, not signing someone, of that A or B type and keeping the pick is not a bad move either. So I guess we'll see what happens here before the end of December through the free agent period. But let's kind of move along here, and let's obviously, how would you rate the Brewers, the improvement the Brewers have obviously shown in actually drafting, first of all, realizing amateur talent and then drafting accordingly, since the Brewers hired their current scouting director, Jack Zdrensik, in 2000. How would you rate how the Brewers have improved in that area?
They've improved so much. Just look at the talent and the level, and and you have to give all the credit in the world to Jack Zdrensik. He's the only person that survived the regime turnover when they went from Dean Taylor to Doug Melvin, and I think that speaks volumes of the job he's done. And the top prospect list, the Brewers have been rated higher and higher by Baseball America. You can only take those so seriously. You got to see how that talent translates on the field. So. Like I said before, you can't give Zdrensik too much credit for drafting Weeks, but he still did take him. And he took Fielder, and, he took, who else is on, like Hardy, J.J. Hardy, guys like that. Dana Eveland was a draft and follow. And these guys are all poised to be major contributors next year. And consider where we were a couple years ago and where we're going. You have to give him all the credit in the world, along with, some of the moves Doug Melvin's made. And
yeah, I think our current farm system compared to the farm system of the late, anytime actually in the 90s, is like night and day as far as the amount of talent that we have available to us and the depth within the organization. So the casual Brewer fan is not going to be necessarily aware of that, but for really hardcore Brewer fans that research into that and look at our past drafts for the last 5 years, they can see that it's because of great drafting. So,
well, additionally, the mindset has changed as well. I think that you're starting to put your focus on scouting and on player development. And you're taking the lessons that perhaps some of the teams in the 90s taught, the Indians, the Twins, the A's, and you're talking about this player development idea. And Melvin, I think, actually deserves quite a bit of credit as well for keeping Jack Zdrensik at his post when he came over. A lot of GMs will come in just like to clean house completely and bring in all their own staff, but he actually kept him there, and I think it was alluded to in the press conference actually with Robin Young a few days ago.
Yeah, it was obviously a very good move because Zdrensik was doing a great job at the time, and Dean Taylor, I think, was even just a victim of a bad circumstance as far as the Brewers moving to the new
and
stadium,
Jeffrey Hammonds
needing to win, and making a push for free agents like Hammonds that kind of backfired. So unfortunately, I didn't think he just did that bad of a job in his short tenure with the Brewers. But I think the move to Melvin obviously was a great one for the Brewers. And we'll talk about that also. But
I got a question. What 2 or 3 players in the Brewer farm system that the average fan doesn't know about do you think will really break through and create an impact? Like names that the casual Brewer fan really doesn't know. Who do you think can really take that next step and really help out the team 2-3 years down the line?
In 2 or 3 years? They got a kid right now that played at Single Lane for the Power, Alcides Escobar, and I don't know if he's a popular name, but he's playing in the Arizona Fall League right now, and he's batting over 300, and he's probably 150 pounds sopping wet, and he doesn't draw walks, he strikes out too much, his defense is shaky. He, all those other things, but the guy can hit, and he's hit in the fall league, and he hit all this past year, and I think he's a name to watch in a couple of years.
Was Escobar a draft pick, or was he taken from one of the other
He was
countries?
an international free agent.
The Dominican or Venezuela?
Yeah, and actually I think both him and Hernan Iribarren, who was his double play partner, were actually both signed before Melvin came over. So
Yeah. Interesting.
another name in the low level. A lot of the guys are household names. Like Ryan Braun, he's going to be out. Charlie Fermain, I think, is a name to watch. He really had a huge year at Helena.
He was like a 3rd or 4th round pick too,
Yep.
not too long ago. So.
And,
That was kind of my next question. A lot of our talk on our shows are what to do with the third base position, and every time I looked in the paper, it seemed like Ryan Braun was doing something. How far away do you think he is? Do you think we should just have Bill Hall starting third base as a stopgap to when Braun's ready, or do you think Braun still has several years to go? I'm not expecting him to play this year, but how far away do you think he is? Are you impressed with his ability?
Yeah, I like Braun a lot. I think the guy's going to hit. Everybody talks about how he may not stay at third, but who cares? Who cares right now? If the guy can hit, just let him do what he does best. As far as making decisions at third base, I'm not a big fan of trying to piece together the 2018 today. So yeah, I let Bill Hall play third every day. And it's funny. The last year at this time, we'd probably look at the organization and we'd say third base is probably the weakest position in the organization, and now it's one of the better ones. I mean, at the major league level, you've got Hall, who seems to start, even though he should probably be a shortstop or second baseman. And even if Branyan comes back or Cirillo comes back or things like that, our third base position is fine. And now we have Braun in the minor leagues, and even Adam Heather had a really good year for Brevard County. He's another name to watch out for. And their 4th round pick from this last year, Matt Gamble, he had a great year hitting for Helena too. So what's turned into an organizational weakness has gone to a strength. But I think Braun, next year at AA, I think they'll fast track him. I think his timetable will be similar to Weeks. I think next year AA, 2007 he'll start at AAA, and if he keeps hitting, he could be up mid-season 2007. I'd say everyday starter 2008 probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, that is probably at least a year and a half, if not 2 years. The Brewers have to fill the stopgap before Braun is ready to contribute at the major league level. So maybe someone like Hall could fill in next year, or maybe it could be a free agent acquisition. You mentioned in a recent article on BrewerFan.net that maybe a dark horse free agent possibility might be someone like Bill Miller from the Boston Red Sox, kind of, and he could fill that short void for a year or two. So either that, or we can obviously we have our options still within our organization with either Hall, Jeff Cirillo, I think wants to return at the league minimum. I guess we'll see what happens with that. But even we still have Wes Helms, even though I think we have to make a decision on him, and I'm assuming we probably won't have him returning. But
Well, an unnamed source I have in the ticket office,
T?
TC will
Tom-
say.
oh, Tom.
He has the insight that
Tom Carter.
Jeff
Tom
Cirillo
Carter,
is
yeah.
he's coming back for the.
Tom Carter.
No, don't say Tom Carter, but that Jeff Cirillo will be coming back as for the
Yeah.
veterans minimum as a team.
And I
Tom
think he's a great
source told
veteran
me.
guy to have out there, definitely. So why not bring him back? He's a all-time fan favorite too. So there's nothing. If he's coming back for the league minimum, why not have him come if he's coming off the bench or what have you?
Well, and additionally, there's a few other veteran third basemen that are on the market that would be able to be had, I think, for less money than some of the other guys right now. You could talk about Joe Randa. I think there's a few other options or possibilities. But in any case, there's a few options out there for us, and if we're talking 2008 or 2007 maybe for Braun, there's definitely a few options out there. So
Yeah. So I would say that Braun would definitely be on the fast track to help out the Brewers, though. So I think our future infield prospects is really exciting to think about. I think about Braun, J.J. Hardy, Ricky Weeks, and Prince Fielder in the same infield. That could just be all-star caliber all the way around. So
Yeah, it could be better than the Rangers right now. They
Yeah.
got Young,
That's a good
Teixeira,
point.
and
right, Hank Blaylock.
Soriano and Blaylock. I mean,
yeah,
that
that's
infield
pretty
could be
phenomenal.
right up there. So.
That's exciting to think about. A couple of last questions here about the draft stuff. Do you have any preference over drafting college versus high school players? Personally, I know Jack Srenzic's kind of does a mixed bag thing. I know that books have been written by obviously Billy Bean of the A's about how focusing on college can be very beneficial, college players. And obviously the Brewers' track record of drafting high school players in the first round or anywhere during the draft has not been all that great recently. But with that being said, do you have any personal preference, or do you always kind of just target the best player available?
Yeah, I fall in that best player available camp.
Yeah.
And anybody asks me who we should take, and it's you hate to hear that answer because people ask you what should we take, and you're like, best player available, and you're like, no, come on, tell me a position,
Yeah.
tell me. And but you know, if all things are equal, I lean towards college.
Sure.
If you have two shortstops that you like really, and they really balance out the same, take the college guy because he's proven. He's he's going to be a couple years older. He's done it against higher level competition already. And if he's that good, it's a good chance he's played with a wood bat too, like the Cape Cod League. Or I'm not a big fan of high school pitchers early, and we've seen that in recent years with Gold and Neugebauer and
Rogers.
Even Rogers.
Yeah.
He's far from the real deal, and Mike Jones, guys like that. But you know, if you don't take a high school pitcher, then in the third round we don't have Will Inman.
Yeah,
who
right.
had one of the greatest seasons, for any of our young pitchers.
An under 2 ERA in his first year.
I think his WHIP was under 1, and I mean he was 6-0, and so.
So obviously throughout the draft is very long. It's so throughout all organizations take a lot of both, a mixed bag. But I think that first round pick is someone that me personally, I think it's the best player available at deal 2. But if I would have to make a decision, I'd always kind of target either college pitchers, or I actually like high school positional players with higher upside a little bit more. But I could be wrong about that type of. I want to take Cameron Mabry this past draft, and we took Ryan Braun. But I actually think that that could be the right pick for this organization.
I think additionally, like you were talking about before, Patrick, it also allows for the fast track possibility, I think, a little bit more. Obviously, if you're a college player, you basically have played rookie league and A-ball, in my opinion, if you've been playing at a very good college program. So I think it allows for some possibilities in the 2007-2008 Braun possibility rather than 2009, 2010. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
I definitely agree with that, too.
That's kind of the way that I look at the draft, but...
Yeah, and that's another advantage when all things are equal. I definitely take college, And like you said, as far as I think that's most teams' idea is you take college pitching and high school positional prospects early, and.
I think one of the main reasons that because I think with such a young arm that possibly got abused at not only little league all the way through high school being used too much, obviously being a phenomenal talent at that level, they probably get mishandled a little bit. And I think the Brewers have seen that, unfortunately, with a track record of pitchers. Obviously, you start back with J.M. Gold, Nick Neugebauer, Mike Jones, and the list goes on. So, I mean, unfortunately, the Brewers have kind of learned from experience. But then again, you can always land someone that really, could be a Hall of Fame quality pitcher. So you don't pass on that if you think coming out of high school. I do agree with that.
Todd Van Poppel.
Well, yeah. Well, of course, there's more examples from other organizations. But one last thing, we're going to take a little break, and then when we come back, we're going to go over position by position, the kind of the Brewer minor league system, and highlight a couple of key guys that possibly we'll see up with the Brewers in the future to kind of educate some of our viewers on the Brewer minor league system. So we'll go to break, and I also wanted to mention that Patrick's, if you're a regular poster or troll or whatever you call it on brewerfan.net forums, your what name is Colby Jack?
Colby Jack.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's who
If you like
Patrick is.
cheese,
That's right. Wisconsin connection.
Yeah. So all right, let's take a short break, and we'll come back with a little bit more in-depth review of the minor league system for the Milwaukee Brewers. Okay, welcome back. We're back here with our special guest, Patrick Ebert, a.k.a. Colby Jack from brewerfan.net. So we're going to go over kind of a little quick review of the Brewers current minor league system, and we're going to focus on guys who are below the major league level, haven't reached the major league level for good yet. And we'll go over a couple of key possible players per position that have kind of made some noise in the Brewer minor league system and kind of show some promise of possibly helping the big club anytime for the next 1 to 6 years. So if some of the people who aren't even really familiar with the minor leagues, maybe I should kind of start that off by saying the minor league system is actually pretty deep. There's several levels. Obviously, working backward, the last level you reach before the major league level is AAA, then there's AA, and then there's a couple levels of single A, both regular A and high A ball, and then below that there's rookie ball. So these players are kind of just making waves at each of the levels of the Brewer minor league system. So we'll start off with the infield here, starting with the catching position. I'll kind of mention, obviously, our current catchers at major league level are Damian Miller, a veteran catcher, and also Chad Moeller. So probably if we can get help at that position in 3 or 4 years, it'd be helpful.
Yeah.
One of, I would say, our top prospect at catcher still is Captain Lou Palmisano. He spent 2005 at high 8. And we also, another player that was named, I believe, the 2005 top player of the year in the Pioneer League, and that was Angel Salami. Moving on to first base, Prince Fielder reached the major leagues last year, but he spent most of the year at AAA, and he obviously is probably our top prospect throughout the organization, and he'll be helping out hopefully next year even. And Grant Richardson at A-ball also had a good year in 2005. Second base, where obviously we have Ricky Weeks already at the major league level. Hernan Iribarren at single A, also Calix Crab at double A. Moving on to third base, obviously our number 1 draft pick from 2005, and that was Ryan Braun. Went through a couple levels. I believe he got all the way up to A-ball. And also Adam Heather, who Patrick already mentioned, had a pretty good season at double A. So, and also another one of our 2005 draft picks, Gamble, was it?
Yep, Matt Gamble.
Matt Gamble had a good season as well. Moving on to shortstop, here's a kind of a name from the past and hopefully from the future too, and that's Enrique Cruz from AA. Obviously, he was a Rule 5 pick that the Brewers had from the Mets, I believe it was. Yes. Mm-hmm. And he had to spend a whole year on our bench and hit well under 200 at the time, but obviously I believe he was about 19, 20 years old at that time. He's been in the minor league since that point and hitting pretty well. He had a great season last year at AA. And also kind of a utility guy and kind of a local fan favorite is Vinny Rotino. He has some shortstop experience. He's an interesting, he got up to AAA last year. Was he from Racine, is it?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So there we go. We cover our infield prospects. Didn't you guys want to mention anything about any of the players that were mentioned, or someone maybe we forgot that people should look out for in the future?
I think Enrique Cruz was a drinking buddy of Ruben Cavedo and Matt Kenny. I saw them one time together.
Is that one private detective that
Cruz was
told you about that?
Well, they got in somehow.
Yeah, Mark
Antoine.
Yeah, okay.
Obviously, the most exciting guys in that list are going to be Prince Fielder and Ryan Braun, former number 1 picks, who I think are going to be really quality, if not all-star level major league players. So that's exciting.
Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about Angel, and you can help me pronounce the last name. Salome?
I think it's Salome.
Salome.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about him. He had great numbers.
Salami.
Salami?
I think it's either
Salami or Salome?
I think his
Slalom?
younger brother, Tim Salmon.
Tim Salmon? Angel Salmon?
No, that's not right.
Okay. Well, in any case, let's talk a little bit about Angel S. And what do you view his potential chances of making the big league roster eventually in a few years? He said 1 great year. Talk a little bit about where he came from, how he got to be a top prospect now. It's just because of the year that he had, or was he looked at as a guy that had this potential when the Brewers picked him up?
Well, they drafted him in the 5th round, so they liked him enough and they liked his potential. And I think coming out of high school, some people were questioning whether or not he could hit, but the guy's got a cannon for an arm. He has all the tools. Another question too. He's a short little guy. I think he's like 5'9", but that doesn't always mean anything, But he's built like a tank, and he's become an instant fan favorite for people that follow the prospects. Whether or not to make the big leagues remains to be seen. I mean, he ended the season at low A, so he's got a long way to go. And his defense isn't as good, as his tools are. I mean, he's got a great arm, but he allowed a lot of pass balls this past year. And but that's part of the learning process, working with the pitchers and things like that. The guy can hit. So, I mean, his bat's probably going to carry him anyway. So
yeah, that'll sometimes be what carries you to the big leagues for sure.
And if you have to have one thing carry you, it might as well be your bat.
And obviously, great hitting catchers are hard to find. I know that after we drafted him, he was compared a little bit to a young Pudge Rodriguez, which is a great comparison, obviously. But I think what you're saying defensively is where he's got some shortcomings. But he does have a cannon arm, I guess. Obviously, he can throw runners out second, but.
Any player who has the tools you have to look at as being potentially, a top prospect. Even though you might have a ton of errors at the lower rookie level or at A-ball, if you've got the tools, eventually that can turn around. And it's like you said. I think it's a little bit of an experiment at first, and eventually you hope that the tools come around and the errors decrease. So hopefully Ricky Weeks is the same way next year at the big league level. We hope for that for our prospects throughout the minor leagues.
It happened to Robin Yount too.
It did happen, yeah. Robin Yount. That's a great example.
All right, well, so there's some exciting infield prospects, and of course, it is exciting to think about our potential infield of the future, with, like I mentioned. So, there's good things to look forward to there. Moving along to the outfield, well, I'm going to throw out a bunch of names. A lot of these players have played left field, right field in the minor leagues, also a lot of center fielders, and a lot of these guys can get converted to different positions in the outfield, a little bit of flexibility there once they move through the levels. Obviously, a couple of key guys at AAA already who you could argue most of these three guys are ready for the major leagues, and that would be Nelson Cruz, Dave Krenzel, a center fielder, and Corey Hart, who's kind of been shuffled around, started as a first baseman, got compared to Sexton, got moved to the outfield. They experimented with that third.
Was never compared to Wes Helms.
No.
So that's good.
That is good.
That's very good.
So there's those three guys who given any possible trades, open up a space in the outfield or injury or something like that, it's nice to have that quality of prospects ready at AAA in the outfield. Also, some other guys, Brad Nelson used to be had a great year at Beloit several years ago, but since that time his stars kind of faded. Also, Tony Gwynn Jr., Charlie Fermaint, who you mentioned, who obviously was a good pick, and Steve Moss is another guy. So out of those outfielders, out of all those outfielders I mentioned, there's someone that really mentioned that really you guys feel would be the best, most quality major leaguer for a career of any of those outfielders I mentioned?
I would say Corey Hart, without a doubt. I mean, the guy's hit at every level. He was the MVP of the Southern League a couple years ago, and I don't know.
How do you rate Hart defensively as an outfielder, like Craig was saying before? He's made a couple position changes. You think he's going to be able to play a major league outfield?
Yeah, he's got great speed. So I mean, even if he has struggles tracking balls, his speed's going to be able to make up. I've heard that he has had some difficulties adjusting to the outfield. But, I'll take his bat again.
Well, and if I remember correctly, first of all, he's got the versatility, but if I remember correctly, last year, even in the big leagues, I think that Yost played him a few games in center field.
That's what I was
Yeah.
play all three positions.
I was actually surprised by
He's
that,
left,
yeah.
right, and center. So, if he's got that kind of versatility plus a bat, like you said, Patrick, I don't know how he could go wrong.
He's also an underrated base runner. I know
He's
he
very
usually
quick,
steals
very
close
quick.
to 20 bases
He
each
had,
year.
his dad hired a speed coach for him.
Yeah.
When he was a kid, I talked to this biomechanical guy with Perfect Game about his speed, and he said he was one of the most gifted runners he's ever
Wow.
seen, like just mechanically. So yeah, I mean he's got that going for him, and he can play third and first.
So we're talking about a guy that's got 3 or 4, maybe even 5 potential tools as a guy
Right.
coming in right away.
Plus, he has probably a certain maturity level. I think he's married with a child already, so
Yeah, he's
at a
got
young
2
age,
kids,
so that helps as well.
Talking about a different guy that you just read off on the list, what about Tony Gwynn Jr.? We did an interview with Frank Kremlis at the end of last season when he came up to coach on the Brewers as an assistant after winning the championship at AAA, and he talked about, we asked him, who did the interview? Was that Chad? Yeah, it was a great interview, by the way. But he said that he did a
It was so
couple...
great, you forgot who did it. But
Well, in any case, Frank was talking with you, and he said that you asked him about the underrated prospects, guys that didn't get the attention. He mentioned 2 guys, Jeff Bennett and Tony Gwynn Jr. What do you guys see as the chances of Tony Gwynn Jr.? I think when the Brewers drafted him, a lot of fans were excited because, well, he had the name of a guy who's going to be in the Hall of Fame. What about him, though, as a player specifically? What do you view as his strengths, his weaknesses, and his chances of making the big leagues the next year or two?
I think his strength would definitely be his batting eye. I think the guy drew like 73 walks this past year. And if he's going to be batting to the top of the lineup, I mean, he's got to get on base. His weakness is he can't hit for power. I saw him hitting Beloit, and his numbers prove it. The guy has almost no power. So that's going to be a problem. That may be the difference between him being an everyday player and a reserve. So.
I really see him as a fourth outfielder myself. Unfortunately, I know fans are excited, but I really do think, unfortunately, in this sake, it's because of the namesake. I do think that the Brewers picked him too high as far as a second-round pick. I think he's more of a, well, I guess it's really tough to gauge what round he should have been picked in, but I think because of the namesake thing, I think he's probably viewed as a better prospect than he actually is.
his base running, his father had great base running.
He's a good base
He's
runner.
pretty fast and a decent base runner. And he's a great defensive center fielder, but I really think I don't see him being a great hitter. I don't think he could, at the major league level, hit much more than 260, 270. And as a fourth outfielder, it might be okay, but as a starter with no power, I don't think that's going to cut it. So I don't think he'll ever be an everyday major leaguer, unfortunately. Things could change. He could, something could spark within him, and he could pick it up and be a better player. But I don't really expect him to be an everyday major leaguer.
You know, and the thing is, though, I think that we saw last season, even though we finished 500, we had, I think, one of our weak spots was the bench. If we can bring up a guy who's got a good batting eye, who can get on base for us, who's got speed once he does get on base, you know, that could be a tremendous tool for a team to have and something that could take us to the next level.
That's a good point. Definitely better than Magruder or Johnson.
Well, yeah.
It gets frustrating after a while.
And it's an upgrade. When you get a guy up there who can draw a walk and who can steal a base once he gets on, I just view that as a tremendous asset if I'm a manager or a Brewer fan.
Yeah, future bench players have their value in the farm system
Absolutely.
too. I mean, Vinny Rotino, Enrique Cruz could very well be the next Billy Hall, but you know, we're going to have to find those guys from within. You know,
Sure.
So.
Good.
All right, let's move along to our pitchers. And of course, the pitching, that's something that's a little bit fickle, I guess, if you could say, in the minor leagues. Guy's going to have a great season at one level, and then at the next level, completely bomb or something. And a lot of it, there's a lot of
Ben
factors
Hendrickson?
involving that. Obviously, you know, the ballpark factors, and as far as with hitters and pitchers, and depending on the different league or stadium they play in. Also, there's just so many factors. But here are some key guys. I'm going to start with the right-handed starting pitchers that could possibly be in the Brewers' future rotation plans. Obviously, former #1 pick Mark Rogers kind of had a difficult learning year last year. I think he finished about 2-9. But I think he still shows promise. He was at the high A ball last year. Dennis Serafate, yeah, he also made up the AAA, helped actually in their championship run with the Sounds. Ben Hendrickson, I don't know about, but anyway, Giovanni also.
It's Italian. That's Gallardo. Try that.
Oh, really? Well, you go ahead.
Okay, Gallardo.
Italian.
Okay.
All right, good.
If it's Spanish, it's Gallardo.
I actually just made that up, yeah. I don't know if he's Italian or not. No
I'm pretty
clue.
sure he's not Italian, actually. I'm pretty sure he's Hispanic. So actually, you have to roll the L's.
We're trying to outreach to different communities around West Dallas.
And in doing so, we can mention our next player on the list, and that's Joshua Wapapa, is it?
Wapapa.
Wapapa, who's actually a Native American.
Native American,
So also, we've got Carlos
Actually,
Villanueva.
Sorry to interrupt. I think he's a native Canadian. I
Really?
think he's right.
Canadian,
from
Native
a
American,
Canadian tribe. So yeah.
Interesting. So he spent last year at A-ball. And we got Charlie Villanueva, who we acquired in the great Wayne Franklin trade with the Giants.
Yes.
Everyone so fondly remembers, all you Brewer fans. Also, Tim Dillard, who was named our 2005 minor league pitcher of the year at high A-ball. Also, he's kind of an unknown name we can mention. Mike Jones, who was at Double-A last year, but unfortunately had to miss most of the season due to injury. Again, that's unfortunate. The guy you mentioned already, and that's our third-round pick from last year, and that's Will Inman, who had a great year at high rookie ball. And then Ty Taubenheim. Am I saying that right?
That's Taubenheim, I think.
Taubenheim? Yeah, Ty. He also had a pretty good year at Double-A, and I kind of like his prospects for the future as well. Actually, is he righty or lefty?
He's a righty.
He's a righty, that's
Yep.
what I thought. Okay, my research is correct. Okay, moving over to the left-handed pitchers. Left-handed pitchers. Also, we've got Dana Evelyn, who obviously jumped from Double-A to the majors last year. He's possible. I can see him being a future rotation candidate.
Were you concerned about Dana Evelyn? I mean, I was getting a little frustrated with him after a while. Do you think he has? I mean, Mike Maddox saw a lot of potential in him, and he liked him right away out of spring training. But what do you see Dana Evelyn as a contributor to the team, or do you think he just had a couple rough outings last year near the end of the year?
Yeah, I think he's a rookie, so he's probably getting used to it, and he's probably getting used to the long season as well. So I mean, he pitched pretty deep, and he was supposed to go to the Arizona Fall League, and I think he just ran out of gas, basically. You know, there's questions about his conditioning too.
Yeah.
So
Just
and he had some
for
great
the
outings
record.
too. There's
Well,
some outings that he's just
Sure.
I was going to say,
dealing.
Maddox probably convinced Joseph, and I know we've talked about this a bit on this show already, but he put Evelyn in at some very crucial situations. I think his first game was against the Nationals, and a tight game in a tough situation. He came in and shut him down. I think that was a good way to
They said
immerse
they
yourself
wanted
in
to
the
get
big
him in
leagues.
right away.
Yeah.
And he did,
I
yeah.
called him up. They want to put his feet to the fire.
So I really think he's
Give
going to
him some credit for mental makeup, if
Yeah.
nothing else. So
Right.
if the arm shuts down, you can build and condition yourself to play a longer season than you were used to if you're used to college or minor league level
Yeah.
seasons. But
So
I give him some credit for mental makeup.
Oh, definitely. And as he matures as a pitcher and under the tutelage of Mike Maddox, I really feel like he's going to be a quality major league player. So that's exciting.
And he's a strong candidate for the 5th starter.
Yes.
Yeah,
Training
possibly
too.
even for next year, definitely.
Especially if the Oka arbitration decision is made.
Yeah,
We might be
or-
finding out an answer to that
Or
in the next
depending
few
on
days.
if we sign a free agent or not. I mean, he's definitely a candidate one way or another. Another guy who had injury problems last year was kind of a favorite former draft and follow of mine. That's Manny Parra. Also, Steve Hammond is a guy who is now playing played in the Arizona Fall League this fall and did fairly well. He's another left-handed guy that we have. And moving on to the bullpen, now obviously bullpen pitchers can come from any rank of the minor leagues. Some of these guys I mentioned might end up being relievers, but as far as guys that are at the higher, at the AAA level, are probably now definitely targeted for relief, and that's Jose Capian, who we acquired for Dan Kolb, of course, and Jeff Bennett, another Rule 5 draft pick from just a year ago. So. Those are guys in the bullpen-wise. So all those guys mentioned, are there any, which pitcher are you the most excited about, any of you guys, as far as Patrick, is there anyone in particular? I know you already mentioned Inman, who we drafted last year. Is there any other guys that you really have great hopes for?
I'm really hoping Parra gets back healthy because I saw him pitch a couple times with Beloit, and just looking at his numbers too. He knew how to pitch. I mean, he was a guy, they probably could have brought him straight up for Beloit, and he would have had some success at the big league level, but you hear his shoulder problems with a pitcher, and you just cringe because you never want to hear that. That's just bad news. Will Inman is another favorite. I love lefties. I'm left-handed myself, so I'll take Steve Hammond. I'll take
Tony Fox.
I'll take Tony Fox. I'll take Teddy Higuera. I'll take them all. So
One name that's not on that list that we've seen here in Milwaukee this past season, who's still young, though, is Jorge De La Rosa. I know that some people are down on him. I still like him myself. I still think there's a huge upside to him. We haven't gotten, I don't think, the chance to see him as much as we should have. Yo seemed to become a little bit disenchanted after a few games in May where he came in and maybe blew an outing or two, but I'm still excited about him, and I think the potential upside is huge with De La Rosa as lefty as
guy I'm
well.
looking forward to is Jeff Bennett. I mean, Krembles said in our interview that he really had explosive stuff, and I think we need a number eighth inning solidifier, and hopefully he can be the guy, so I'm looking forward to seeing what Jeff Bennett can do.
Mike Adams could be that guy, too.
Mike Adams,
He's another guy that-
Yeah, we kind of forgotten.
Brian
It
Wolf,
started as our
Brian Wolf, Mitch Stetter, a couple other minor league guys that could be in the bullpen next year. So
yeah.
Good.
So,
That's a good point.
all right, well, great discussion, guys. Again, Patrick, thanks for all your expertise and insight. And we're going to have to take a little break here. We're kind of running out of time, but this has been a great show so far. So we'll come back and we'll do a little bit. Actually, what we're going to need to do is, of course, find out where our great host and friend Scotty Bartell is. So let's take a short break and let's find out right now where in the hell is Scotty Bartell.
Let's call Antoniak.
And we're back at the Brew Crew Review. It's time for my favorite segment of the show, Where in the Hell is Scott Bartell? And thanks to a certain private detective on Forest Home Avenue, Mark A.
Antoniak?
Toniak.
Okay.
He's
Mark
private,
A.
so you can't say his last name. We'll just say Mark A. We won't say Antoniak.
Okay.
For the Where in the Hell is Scott Bartell, this private detective has brought us Scott Bartell, and he brought him in a suit as well. Scott, where have you been?
Well, it's been a busy couple weeks. Actually, a lot of trick-or-treating. Incidentally, Greg, you guys are out of candy now, so it's kind of been holding back there. You're out of candy now.
Cotton candy.
Cotton candy, yeah, he's a big fan, big fan. Scott, it's great to see you again. I mean, we kicked off our executive producer. We're probably going to get fired. The studio is probably going to dock our wages for this, but glad you're here and sitting in the hot chair.
It's definitely great to be back, I'll say that.
Good to see you, Scotty.
I think it's time for our email of the
All right.
of the week.
We've
And
got,
Vincent, you have the winning email. It's from a buddy
emails
of ours,
to choose
actually.
from. We got an email here. It's from Martin Welskoff of West Dallas. Marty writes an interesting email, and we've got a picture. He sent us a little attachment as well that we could pass around here. Craig, our executive producer, can probably show this one on the air in a little bit. But Martin Welskoff of West Dallas writes, "Boys, since it's the off season, I'd like to discuss something off topic. I just shot a 300-pound bear. What's the biggest animal that you've shot? Additionally, what free agents are the Brewers going to sign this offseason?" Okay, so Chad, what's the biggest animal that you've shot? And if you don't want to tell Marty about it, I think he'd appreciate it.
Well, the biggest animal I've ever shot is probably my old girlfriend, but I just got off parole for that. Secondly, free agent. I don't know. I guess probably Washburn's the guy. I guess Doug Melvin. We got this scoop on Brew Crew Review, if you watch the next episode, from Doug Melvin himself that A.J. Burnett is not in our plans. I guess it might be Jared Washburn. I don't know if it's worth spending all that money on Jared Washburn. I don't think he's that much better than Atoma Oka. I know you like left-handers, but I don't know. I think maybe it's Jared Washburn. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But with arbitration and salary raises, maybe we won't make a big splash this year. Maybe we'll wait till next year. Who knows? Time will tell. But you wrote an article recently on BrewerFan.net. Do you have any comments or insight?
And also, you brought up a great point earlier on the show, and you said, well, the Brewers could lose their number one draft pick if we sign a type A or B free agent.
Correct.
You just want to, what do you think the chances are the Brewers signing someone like Washburn, or probably not Burnett, but a pitcher of that caliber, or a position player for that matter?
I don't think it's very likely. I think Melvin's already said, pretty publicly and even, to you privately that it's unlikely that they hit the free agent market. And I don't think they'll let that type A or B thing affect. If they can get Washburn, I'm sure they'd bring him in if he decided to come for a salary they could bring. I think they'll handle that fifth starter spot in-house, whether it be with Sarfate or Eveland or even with Rick Helling if he came back. So,
Scotty?
Well, what is our pick this year? 16, I think?
16th.
Is that right?
No rust on
It's-
Scott.
Nice. That's right with it.
I thought last year, even when we signed Damian Miller, I thought that was purely out of necessity, but even then we were thinking, boy, do you really want to give up even a second-round pick for him? So I suppose anything's really possible. I really think that Melvin's really going to try to, anything that we need, he doesn't necessarily have to go free agency. I think he can do it by way of trade. You never know. He might try to deal over Bay for something. I think he's going to look at that first. I suppose if we got him for the right amount of money, it could happen. But
Scotty, I'm glad to see that they've got internet up in Bernie's Chalet. It's a good assessment, I think. My personal take on this is that we're going to go with some lesser-priced options. If you see the interview that we did, short little interview that we did with Doug Melvin, he talks a bit about the bullpen help. I think you mentioned in your column as well, I could really see us going after a guy like Danny Cole, making him a setup man. To turn bring him back to Milwaukee where he's had some success. Could probably get him for a fairly reasonable price because of his bad year. I think you could correctly say he had last year in Atlanta, but a former All-Star, a guy who's had success in Milwaukee, and a guy who may not mind coming back and serving in a setup role. He likes Ned Yost, he likes the organization, he likes the city, he never wanted to leave.
He loves Mike Maddox, too.
He loves Mike Maddox, as we all do.
Cue the music real quick, right?
And Mike Maddox had a great influence on him in his time here. Additionally, like we talked about before, I think that the bench could be a place where we could use an upgrade. Maybe it's re-signing Cirillo and bringing in somebody else. Maybe it's letting everybody go that we had last year, bring in a couple new guys. So, other comments that you guys might have on the free agent market or the assessment of Marty's killing of a bear? Any other names? I don't.
By Marty killing the bear, I think it's a pretty darn big bear if you see a picture.
Yeah, well,
Actually, I heard that bear weighed 300 pounds. Marty actually carried it on his back up the hill into the back of his truck.
Nothing with Marty actually surprises me.
it doesn't say, did he kill it with his bare hands, or how did he?
It says Marty Welskoff, a.k.a. the Davy Crockett of West Dallas. So whatever that means, you can cue the Davy Crockett music right now too, Craig. So in any case, bear meet next year up in the press kitchen. I think we're all looking forward to that. But before we end the show today, we actually got a chance to go to Miller Park a few days ago for the Robin Young press conference. When we were there, the whole Brewers organization turned out, and we were able to capture an interview with Daron Sutton, the Brewers television analyst. I've been here for a few seasons now, so check out the interview, and I think that Daron's having a good time here in Milwaukee. All right, this is Vince Travato with the Brew Crew Review, and we're here with Brewers television announcer Daron Sutton. Darren, what are you doing this offseason, and how are you spending your time?
Well, one thing I'm doing, and I was just telling you guys about it, is checking out your show. I really enjoy the work you guys do, and a couple of years ago we threw a few things up there on 11/11 on Time Warner Cable, and it's fun because the one thing we were saying is baseball talk disappears a lot. You have to look for it. You have to surf the net a lot, and especially on television. So I appreciate you guys filling the void. Otherwise, watching my kids and doing some UWM basketball.
Great. And then as far as broadcasting goes, you're doing the UWM basketball. Do you do anything else in the offseason to stay sharp if you have to, or is it something that you just kind of get back into in the spring with baseball season?
Yeah, it's one of those things where, and you don't think that it would, but I think when you go to the occasional luncheon or banquet, just being quick on your feet, having impromptu abilities, I think doing that. But no, not anything other than banquets. And I read the web every day. I read the articles about the different cities, and I feel very close to what we're doing here. So that's about it. I take a lot of R&R and help my wife out with the kids, which I've mentioned twice. I mean, that's an important part of the wintertime because she's so important in the summer.
Okay, and you've been here a couple seasons now, and I'm sure that it seems like you're enjoying your time in Milwaukee. What can you say a bit about the team and talk about the improvement that this club has made in the time that you've been here?
I can put it simply. When we go out for our winter banquets, as we have in the last few years, I felt like we were spinning. We were trying to be optimistic, and a lot of times I felt like I was stretching a little bit. No longer. No longer do I feel that way. There are reasons to be optimistic. They're not false reasons. They are real reasons. I mean, national publications now are saying we could be the surprise of the big leagues next year. There's talented pitching. It could get a little bit deeper. I'd love to see another starting pitcher. There's a good, young, talented infield, and there's veterans in the outfield. So, along with what we've seen with the Ned and now Robin coming on board and Dale Swaim, and a great GM who's a nugget miner who can find things everywhere. It's a lot of reasons to be excited about the future here, and thank God we don't have to spin things anymore.
That's right. You just mentioned 3 names from Brewers history, 2 of which were on that 1982 team with your father. What do you think the chances are of seeing your dad's name and number up here at Miller Park as one of the retired numbers? And has that ever crossed your mind, or have you ever talked to him about it, and what's he said?
You know what? I can answer that very simply. I don't think so. I just don't think he served enough time here. I think he would be humbled and honored. And obviously, the short time he had here, even if you break it on down to 1 big month, it was one of the biggest months that any player's ever had here. But, his number is retired in Los Angeles, and he's in the Hall of Fame. And I think he will always enjoy, more than having his number up there, when he comes to town with the Braves, that everyone, from security folks to people that are walking down the street when he stays at the Pfister, just thanking him. I think the thank yous that he gets are as big as having his number up there.
All right. Well, we don't have quite the same viewership as Fox Sports Net, but Daron, we appreciate your time and the work that you're doing in the booth. We saw him in Toronto. He did a great job. He was as big a fan as any of us, so thanks again for your time.
Yes,
good work.
We had a few beers together. That was an enjoyable part of it. You guys keep up the good work. I appreciate the show.
Thanks again, Daron. He sounded like he enjoyed our show, actually. He said he had seen it a few different times. He'd been looking at the video clips online. He also talked about the time when he was buying beer for several of our crew members up in Toronto. So
I think we have footage of that, too.
Yeah, there might be some footage of Toronto, if you're not acquainted with that footage already from June and our last road trip. But in any case, it's been a great show, gentlemen. I don't know if there's any last-minute comments that you guys would like to say, but
I'd like to thank Patrick for being on the show, taking his time here and bringing his insight and teaching myself a lot about the minor league system. It was good to hear your insight and expertise on that. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's
Absolutely.
been a good time.
Absolutely, and thank you, Patrick, for coming in. Once again, Patrick writes for the website www.brewerfan.net. Your screen name is, once again,
Colby Jack.
Colby Jack, so make sure that you guys send him a comment if you enjoyed his presence here on the show, which I'm sure that you did. Additionally, our website is www.brewcrewreview.com. Viewer emails are always going to be read here on the air, as Marty proved with his bear story today. So anything interesting, outlandish, baseball-oriented, we'd love to bring it to you, Wisconsin, so make sure that you email us. It's chad@brewcrewreview.com.
And I'd also like to thank Mark A for bringing Scott back to us, too. I think that's very important.
Yeah,
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
Yeah, well,
Private detective.
and though we haven't had the best success, viewers can try to reach Scott at brewcrewreview.com.
Mark did tell me that you guys told him that I could be brought back dead or alive. Was that a joke? Because I was kind of hoping.
He wasn't supposed to say
Yeah, the station put out that thing with the reward
That was
money.
Craig.
But
Well,
yeah, it was
it's
Craig.
the thought that counts. Thanks.
Yeah, Craig at brewcrewreview.com can be reached, and you can talk to him about the reward money for Scott at the Network Hero Pay. And I'm Vince at brewcrewreview.com. So make sure you send us some emails. Love to talk baseball in the winter. It's certainly better than football season here in the state at the time, so I'll stick to baseball. And until then, I suppose that it's time to tell you to stay classy, Wisconsin.
Born on a mountaintop in Tennessee, greenest state in the land of the free. Raised in the woods, so's he knew every tree. Killed him a bar when he was only 3. Lardy, Lardy Bucket, king of the wild frontier.
Why do you build me up, buttercup baby, just to let me down and mess me around, and then worst of all, never thought, baby, when you say you will, but I love you still. I need you more than anyone, darling. You know that I have from the start. So build me up, buttercup, don't break my heart. I'll be over at 10, you told me time and again, but you're late. I waited